Hello and welcome to this webinar on how to use Zotero at Endeavour College. I like to start my webinars off with an acknowledgement of country, and today I would like to acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara traditional owners of the land from which I am presenting today. This webinar will talk about what Zotero is, as well as its online platform, extension, briefly its app, and mostly the software that we use when we're using Zotero. I'll also run over some examples for exporting and importing citations into the Zotero software, as well as some of the software tools that you can use. Finally, I will show you the library's resources that we have available for our students to support you downloading and using Zotero. Firstly, I'd like to mention that it is really important that you have a good knowledge of APA 7th edition before using any reference tool manager. Reference tool managers like Zotero, they don't reference for you, they work alongside you to reference. Essentially, Zotero is a library of all of the resources that you have saved into it. And that library is only going to be usable if you have the correct information stored into Zotero. When you're putting information into Zotero, most of the time there's going to be a level of editing involved. But once you have made these edits, Zotero remembers them and then will continue to generate correct and accurate citations for you in every instance. It does take a little time to get used to and to set up, but it absolutely saves you time on the other side once you're efficient and confident in using the Zotero software. If you've used other referencing managers before, such as Mendeley or EndNote, it does work very similar. I find that Zotero tends to sync and work a little more flawlessly than Mendeley. And my preference is Zotero to compare the other reference managers. Zotero is a free download. It integrates with Microsoft Word, Google Docs, and Office Libre. And it syncs across an online platform, a desktop app, a phone app, and a browser extension. If you're looking for more resources on Zotero, I recommend looking directly at the Zotero website. Their forums have a lot of information from users about how they navigate Zotero and sometimes find solutions to questions that you may also have. To access the online platform, you do need to create an account. Zotero does not spam you, so whatever logins you choose to use, whether it's your personal email or your student email, it just works to sync everything up across all of the platforms. When you're using the software, you will also need to log in through the software to access this online account. The online platform does look very similar to what you would see in the software. However, the app, the software, and the platform all sync up and work together. Essentially, the online platform is like a cloud-based version. It is the main brain center of your library. And even if you sync up but never use the online platform, you do need to have those logins to make Zotero work. This is a look at the software, which has been downloaded and installed on my PC. And you can see the layout is quite similar. It is also advantageous to use perhaps the app and the online platform if you're researching or finding information across different devices, such as your phone or a maybe a library computer or a personal computer, because you're still able to save everything into your Zotero library. And even if you're using a computer that doesn't have the software downloaded on it, by saving it in the online platform, the next time you access the PC with the software on it, it will automatically be added into this for you to use. The browser extension for Zotero can be found here. You can download it easily through Chrome or any of your other browser extensions. And there's also the option to do that directly through the software as well. And finally, the app. If you are using an iPhone, there is an official Zotero app available to you. If you're using an Android device, there are comparable Android apps that you can also use. Log in with your Zotero credentials and then access this library, which is held through the cloud. Firstly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder here in my Zotero library, because that way we'll be able to choose which folder it's going into, and I will be able to show you once we've finished importing the citations how to find that and then edit everything in that folder. So to add in a folder, all you do is you add the folder, and that's going to go into my library. If you're wanting to create several libraries, you can do so. I always work through one library because I don't feel the need to create separate libraries, but separate libraries might be good if you're doing different course codes, or if you're wanting to separate up different disciplines of information, or if you're studying more than one degree. I find that the folder option under my library is enough, because as you can see, you can label them whatever you like and then separate up your articles within them easily. Anything that's saved in these folders, even if they are only saved into this folder, they will automatically become available then in the overarching My Library. So it does work very similar to a folder system on your PC hard drive as well. Adding in a folder, we're going to call this one Webinar. It appears at the bottom of the other folders that I've already created. And the reason I've done this is because when we're using the extension, it's going to give you a choice to choose your folder. And I want to show you the difference between using the folders that are automatically detected and the one that you actually want to add it into. If we're looking at this first resource, this is obviously the Mayo Clinic, a very popular resource for people wanting to have some reference information about any specific medical condition. It's also a web page. So when you look at my little extension here, you'll notice that the icon changes depending on the type of resource we're looking at. This icon at the moment, it's kind of saved as a little web page. It's understanding that this is a web page and it's going to save the information required to build a web page reference. There we go. So it does pop up with all of your folders here, and you let you select which folder you want to add it into, and it does wait for you to select the folder that you like before it saves it. We're going to save everything that we're saving today into the webinar folder, and that way it's going to be really easy to see how to edit these few references and resources that we're working with. So what it's done is it's detected any information on this web page that's going to help to build a web page reference, and it's just saved that into Zotero. So if I open this now and we look at webinar, it's already sitting there with all the information that we need. It's always important to check this information. And if you're going to come back and check information later, make sure that URL is accurate, because then you're actually going to be able to go back and look at the web page. If you don't save that URL, then you're going to have to find the information again. We'll come back and do any editing that's required a little bit later. For now, we'll just work on importing some resources. So we have our information to build the reference for Mayo Clinic. It's all stored in here in the library. And if I want to come back and look at this later on after I've closed down my browser tabs, if you double click on this, it's going to launch it again in your browser. So you can come back and look at this information again and again just by saving it into Zotero. This is why our URL is important. So again, Zotero doesn't just save information to build a reference, it's saving the article and to access information to access that. So what you can do is you can find all of your information to make your assignment, and then you can save it into Zotero and then come back later and review all of that information in good time to understand what you've got and figure out whether it's what you need. The next thing that we're going to look at is the EBSCO articles. So I've done a little pre-search here. I might just do a little refresh. Wonderful. So we've got some journal articles now. And if you're wanting to use these journal articles, you can just click the little save button and it's going to save them into your EBSCO folder if you're signed in, which I'll quickly do. Wonderful. So you can save them into your EBSCO folder. And if you're choosing not to use a browser extension, this is a way that you can actually import references into Zotero. I do recommend using the browser because it's going to make it way easier. I will show you both ways regardless, and then we can compare the differences. So if you're saving this into your EBSCO folder, it's going to then export as an RIS file, and that's the file that our reference managers recognize. So essentially, any case that you can create an RIS file, whether that's exporting them through a database, or maybe if you're using a different reference manager and you want to start using Zotero, if you export all of your references as an RIS file and then import that file into Zotero, it will just convert them into Zotero citations automatically for you. It's a really easy process. I'll show you how to do that now. So you can either save individually or you can save all of them. So we're going to save the first 10 results. They'll go into my folder. I'm going to choose my webinar folder. Okay, and then you go to your folder. I'm going to choose the webinar folder because that's where I've just saved them. You want to choose those 10 articles we've just grabbed. Select, or you can select individually just the ones you want. Once you've decided on the articles you do want to move into Zotero, you can export. You can choose whether you want to remove them from the folder you've just looked at or not. I'm just going to leave them there for now because it doesn't really matter. And we want that RIS format. If you're ever confused which one you're supposed to use, just use this one that mentions Zotero. Save. It'll create a little download. And in this instance, because I have my extension installed, it's asking me if we want to use the extension and Zotero connector as a preference. Because I teach both, I can't do that. But for you, the first time you do this, you click OK, and then it will remember and won't prompt you again. There you go. So it just creates a little delivery. And that little delivery, what we want to do is you want to go File, Import. Yes, we want to import that. Perfect. So when you do a delivery, it creates a new folder. If you're wanting to just move all of these into that webinar folder, you simply select the ones that you do want to move. And you can just drag and drop them. There we go. So now we've got that first web page and the first 10 results from our EBSCO search. Now this was using the delivery method. If you have that browser extension, this is what it could be. Instead of having to do a delivery, Zotero, you can see the icons change to a folder, and that's because it's detecting multiple resources on the page. And you can just select the ones that you want. Click OK, and it's just going to save it into the folder where you want it saved. And you can actually watch the process here and the progress. So it's telling you that it's saving them in. And then as they go from grey to black, they're saved. And by doing it this way as well, it's also going to grab any articles that are available online to view directly through Zotero, so that when you do that double click in the future, it'll just launch that article for you ready to go. So if we again look back at webinar, you can see they've added in really nicely. It's still syncing up, so we'll check back in a while because it's detecting any PDFs that need to come along with it. We move on to a Google Scholar search. The same thing, we have that little folder and it just detects everything that's in our search. So we're just going to select the ones that we do want to move over. And when you're using Google Scholar, keep in mind that not everything is going to be available at Endeavour College. This one isn't. This one isn't. So we're only going to choose the ones that either are available at Endeavour College because we want to have that active link to be able to look at them. Or if you're prepared to maybe go through a paywall, then you're absolutely welcome to choose those ones as well. But me personally, I only really want to save things in Zotero that I can access later. So I select the ones that I do want to use. So using interpretive phenomenal, that one is available as a PDF, so we'll keep that one. The next one is available, find it at Endeavour, and public health, nutrition, and policy is as well. So I'm going to remove these ones. The others probably are as well. We do have quite a good amount of articles available at Endeavour, and you can access those articles by clicking this link here as well if you want to at a different time. We'll just use these three at the moment. So again, it saves it into the folder that we want to save it into. It's bringing the full text as well because they're available through Endeavour. And as it turns from grey to black, then it will be completed in the Zotero library. So it's still kind of syncing and adding stuff in. And then once it's all done, they'll be sitting in there waiting to go. In PubMed, you can also do either the delivery method or the extension method. Google Scholar obviously doesn't have a delivery method, but we can do that extension. So if you're wanting to do delivery method through PubMed, you go save, whether it's all results just on the page, or just a selection of results. You want to choose the PubMed format, which is an RIS format. You're going to create the file and it's going to download that little delivery again. So I'm going to delete this because we've already got them all saved into this one anyway. So when we're importing, it's going to do the same thing. It'll create a little delivery folder for us. Hello. It's going to let me drag over. There we go. So we want to import the RIS file. At another time, drag and drop into the webinar one. And once they're all there, which is usually pretty fast, you can delete that collection if you like. If it's easier, you can also just rename that folder and keep that folder with all of your stuff in. But now we're going to combine it all. So you can already see, looking at this overview, as stuff start to come in from all of those syncs and drops that we've done. The articles have a little white page and the web pages have a blue icon page here. And when you look at the library overview, you can see there's quite a lot of different icons and possibilities. And this depends on whatever item type it's saved as. And depending on that item type is the type of reference it's going to generate in your Word document for you. So now that we've imported all of our references, if you're wanting to do the PubMed through the extension, it works exactly the same as the Google Scholar and the EBSCO one that we did. So now that we've got all of our imports here ready to go, we can edit them. And if you have a look, it's actually quite obvious that this is where your knowledge of APA needs to come in. So we've got an article here that has capitalization. And we've also got another article that has capitalization. So you can click in and just edit that capitalization so that it generates an accurate reference for you. Something else about all of these articles is that they're all the articles that we found online. So if you have a resource that is maybe not available online, or you only have a partial bit of information for, you can still add it into your Zotero library, either via the wizard or by a manual entry. So the wizard gives you a couple options for ISBNs, DOIs, and PMIDs. So PMID is PubMed ID. So if you're using PubMed, all you need to do is just grab a PubMed ID, which we will do now because we're still using PubMed. And we're going to copy that and pop it in our little wizard, hit enter. And while it searches for it, adds in for us and brings all of that information that's under the PMID for you as well. If you only have a DOI, for example, if one of your lecturers has given you a journal article, has used a journal article, and you want to grab that information so that you can also cite the same journal article, you simply grab your DOI, pop it in. So the DOI, again, it's just that number at the end of the URL. We don't include the HTTPS ... because that's what makes it an active URL. Just this component is the DOI itself. That's what we drop into Zotero. And you can see it's dropped it in here with all of the lovely information attached, including abstract information that's available under that DOI. It's also brought along the PDF version that's available for us to view. And if you have a physical book, maybe one of your PRs or a book that you've borrowed from the library that doesn't have any information online, or maybe you just have the ISBN, which is the 9-digit number that's available on the copyright page of a book, you can type that in, hit enter, and it's going to bring that book and put it straight into your library for you as well. A little book icon to tell us that it's the item type is a book, and it brings all the information to create an accurate reference for you. If you don't have any codes or numbers to use for the wizard, you can still add manually. And this is a really good tool for if you have maybe a software that you need to add into your Zotero reference library, or maybe a database that you've been using for some of your research. If you add here, it gives you a selection of things that you can choose for an item type. And if you go more, there is a longer selection. Now, for whatever reason, web page is not included in this list, but it is included in this list. So when you go to add one in, if it is a web page, just choose any one of these and you can change it to a web page when you start to add that information in manually. So we're going to actually do a web page now because I'm going to add in information for Anatomy TV. I've been using Anatomy TV for some of my assignment. I've got some screen captures. I need to create a reference for it. So luckily for Anatomy TV, we actually have a pre-built reference on the library website, which I'll go to. I'll just close some of these down for now. So if we go into referencing and we go to a reference list entry for a database, and we're looking at Anatomy TV here, we want to use this information to build a reference in Zotero. And where you could just copy paste this into your reference list, it is important that you're putting things into Zotero if you're using them in your assignment, because I will show you in a moment what I mean. But once you start using Zotero in your assignment, if you begin to add things in manually to your reference list, it may just remove them because you've started using Zotero. You need to kind of continue using Zotero for that assignment. I'll show you a way to get around that towards the end of this webinar. But for now, we're going to add in Anatomy TV as a database. So because our little template here has an author, a date, a title, and a source, we're going to use a web page item type to build, because web pages have almost exactly the same requirement for building a reference list entry. They require author, a date, a title, a source or site name, and a URL. For our databases, we don't need to include a URL because they're all accessed through Endeavour anyway, and your lecturers and markers should know that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to copy paste this information into Zotero directly. So our author, if it comes up with a first and a last name, you can click this to toggle over to just one. So because we have our author is Primal Pictures, they are an institution, we only need to put in one name here. The title, I've been using 3D Atlas. If you're using a different component of Anatomy TV, you'd have to change the title to whatever component you're using. But in this instance, we're just going to copy what's available for us on the library homepage. And next we have the date, which is no date. So in Zotero, you do have the option of either adding no date, ND. Alternatively, you can just leave that blank and it will automatically figure out that it's an N.D. entry in your reference list. And we want to take over this component as well, because that is the website title or the source. Now, this is going to generate for us a nice citation and reference list entry in our assignment when we start to add things in. If you're interested in having a look what this might look like now before you add it into your assignment, you can do that. I'll show you how to do that now. And it's really good if you're kind of using an item type that may not fit precisely. Like in this instance, this is a database item. They don't have an option for database. So we've adapted the web page entry to match. Now, if you're wanting to see what that looks like, all you need to do is go to Edit, Preferences, Style Preview, and Refresh. And what that's going to do is whatever reference you have highlighted in your Zotero library, you have Anatomy TV highlighted at the moment because we were just editing that. It's going to generate a little preview for APA 7th edition and what that's going to look like as an in-text citation and what it's going to look like as a reference list entry. And if this isn't matching up exactly to what you've got in maybe the library guide or what you know should be right, you can just be playful and pop that information in whatever field you feel like it needs to be in to get that accurate citation on the other end. So at the moment, this is just a preview, and that's all we need to see to know now it's going to generate an accurate reference for us because it matches what is on the library guide here. All right, so I'll close that down. We'll have another go doing a piece of software in a moment, but for now, I'm just going to edit some of the information that we do have in here. So if I go to this one, which we imported just with the little wizard, you can see that there's some capitalization. What we want to do is you want to remove that capitalization because in a reference list entry for APA, we only use sentence case. American stays capitalized because it is a proper noun. So on all the way to the end, which I will very quickly do. Almost finished. Wonderful. Lovely. So that's now accurate for APA. It will generate an accurate reference because we've updated it knowing that that's what's required for APA 7. If you ever have an instance where the first name of the author is in the wrong field, make sure you swap that around. Otherwise, when it generates a citation or reference list entry, it will use the first name instead of the last name. So just make sure that the last name is in the last name field and not swapped around for whatever reason in the import. You can choose to include your abstract. It doesn't matter because once again, it's only going to use information from this to make an accurate APA 7 reference on the other side. So if there's too much information in here, usually it's okay. Once we get on the other side, if it's bringing in extra information that's not required, you can just delete it from this panel so that it doesn't bring it over. Easy as that. Everything else should be good and ready to go. So to save any changes, just click out of this panel and that will update everything and save it there for you. I'm going to leave a couple of these as title cased and not fixed, because then when we're adding things into our Word document, I'll show you the difference between doing it in the document versus doing it in Zotero and how easy it is to just refresh and have everything updated. All right, adding in a software, you can use the software here. So I want to add in Food Zone. I've been using Food Zone for some of my research, for some of my client interviews, and I want to acknowledge that Food Zone is a software that I've been using, which we should be doing in our assignments. So if we're wanting to do Food Zone, which is a cloud-based software, there's not going to be a version number, and there may not be some of this other information as well. But in order to generate that accurate reference, again, you can just go to the APA reference list and copy paste over the information here that you need. So we've got an author is nutrition experts. So we're going to pop that into the programmer. The year is the current year because copyright will extend automatically to whatever year it is. Food Zone is the title, which goes at the very top here. Next, we'll need to actually include computer software in square brackets because for whatever reason, Zotero is not doing that. So we put that into system. You can take away this square brackets, they will generate in our other reference. But by putting it into system, it's recognizing that it's a computer software to compare maybe an app, which we've got here, an app or a software. So you're just making sure that that information is going to be available in the reference as well. And we do also need to put in that URL. So I'm going to copy that over. And we're going to add into, of course, URL. Now, if we click out, we can see all that information has been saved here as a software icon. And if we want to make sure that that's accurate and it's going to generate correctly on the other end, you can go to Edit, Preferences, in the Site panel, which it should automatically open to, click Style Preview. And as long as you've got the right one highlighted, you can click Refresh. If you don't, you can just click back into Zotero, quickly choose the one you need before you click Refresh. And it's going to show us, where is it? Here it is. That perfect citation and reference list entry, which just so happens to also match our copy paste that we've done. Again, if you're generating this preview and it's just not working, you can absolutely be playful and pop that information into whatever field is going to make it generate an accurate reference. Okay, things like Food Zone and Anatomy TV, you may not need to access it directly through Zotero, but because you need to include it in your reference list, it's worth adding it in, and then it just remembers how to do it right every single time you have to do it again in the future. So if you're using it for this assignment, chances are you might want to use it for future assignments. Once you've done it correctly once, it's always going to be there. You'll never have to think about doing it correctly again. It will just do it for you. Okay, so we've talked about editing the item information here as well. And we've talked about looking at a preview for the citation. If you're ever concerned that there's too much information in here, again, just check your preview. This one's got quite a lot. And so did this one really, with all that abstract and extra information. For a journal article, we can preview that. And 7th edition, we've got all the authors, we've got the year, the title, journal, and you know, that's perfect. So we don't have to worry about all that extra information. You can keep it there if that's going to be helpful for you when you're going back through your Zotero library to choose resources to review. You can also just delete it if you don't want to have the extra information. As long as you've got those fields full, that are required to create an accurate reference on the other end. That's all that matters. Okay. Extra features that are available in Zotero besides just putting stuff in and generating citations is, if you look at my library here, you can see that there's some blue dots and there's some PDFs. The blue dot, if you double click, is going to launch it up on your browser. It just means that the item has an attachment. It is downloaded and available. However, if you don't have that little blue dot, you can also manually add in any information. So say, for instance, you've purchased this article, or maybe it's one that you do have access or you've saved in a hard file on your laptop, whether it's a journal article or maybe like a book scan, if you've done some photocopying at the library, or if it's a saved document from maybe your lecture slides or saved from your course content. You can just do a little right click and you can add an attachment. It doesn't have to actually be the article. You can add any attachment you like, whether it's your notes with regards to that article, or it's a URL to take you to the online article. You can also do a little find available PDF, and sometimes it's able to have a look and see if there's a PDF available for it online anywhere for free, and it will automatically attach that PDF. If you're wanting to have a look and see how many references you've got available in a folder, if you're required to have 20 references for your assignment, say for instance in your NMDA one, you can see that there's 39 items in this folder, and you might need to have only 38, so you can be confident that the ones that you do have, that's going to cover that item count for your reference list and for your rubric. So if we have a look here in webinar, if let's see, we click back onto it, there's also happens to be 39 in webinar as well. But there's also quite a lot of duplicates, which means that there's copies of the same thing over and over again. So I want to get rid of those duplicates because there's no reason to keep them. You'll notice that some of these items have a PDF and some of them don't. So when we're merging these to get rid of the duplicates, you can choose which one you want to save as a master file to then move information into this one and ensure that you're saving the information from this one as the main information. So to do that, you go to duplicate items, and this is going to bring up all the duplicate items in my library. It's as easy as just selecting the items, and depending on which one you want to use as the master item, you can either click this one or this one, and when you toggle between the two, if there's any differences in information, it's going to be really obvious because this is the information for the top one. This is information for the second one, so they're pretty identical. We can just merge them. This one here, you can see we've got a PDF for the top one, but for the second one here, we don't have a PDF, and the information is changing as we're flicking between the two. It's not overly noticeable at the moment. Most of it is just that little full stop. But we want to keep the file that has that PDF. So we're going to choose this as our master file and then merge this into the master file. And once it's been the duplicates have been merged, it's removed from this view, but it's still available then in our webinar folder. There it is with the PDF still attached. And then all the information from that second has been merged into this master item list here. Easy as that, you just select the ones that you want. If it doesn't really matter, you can just go ahead and merge those items. I'm going to select that one, merge the items, again, merge. This one's got a PDF, this one doesn't, so I'm going to choose the first one. And same here, same again. These ones, it's a little extra information. If you look down here, a little bit extra information in the second one. So I'm going to choose the second one as my master, and you just go through and you can do this for all of your duplicate items. So I'll rush through to get these done now. Once there's no more duplicate items, nothing will show up here anymore. So that's the duplicate items for everything in your library, not just in a folder. So I do recommend taking a peek and getting those duplicates done almost every time you open Zotero, so that if you're ever importing new information into just one folder, it's not a guess or extra work to figure out what items you're trying to actually get rid of. So now we can see there's 27 items here. We've gotten rid of quite a lot of duplicates, but I only needed 20 for my assignment to meet my rubric requirements. So that's okay with me. Okay. Another extra feature that Zotero is able to do is you can actually attach tags to these. So if you've got a lot of information, say for this assignment, you only need studies that have maybe adults in them, or if you're wanting to create tags to make you to help you find certain articles or articles of a type or for a particular subject easier, you can easily create tags. At the moment, they're all visible down here, all of the tags. And every time you import anything from the internet, it does bring in automatic tags as well. So if you don't want to have automatic tags, just select the item that you're looking at, go to tags and remove the ones you're not interested in. If you want to add a tag in, you can add in really easily whatever you want it to be. I'm going to make this tag SOC2 121. You know what? This one's also going to be really good for SOC2 121. Perfect. So if you go back to your library view now, if you have your library, you can't be bothered looking at whatever articles have got SOC2 121 tagged, but you want to find them really quickly, all you have to do is type in that tag, click on it, and it's going to filter out anything that doesn't have that tag attached to it. To go back and look at your full library, you simply unclick it, and it will remove that tag search for you. If you're wanting to see anything that maybe has an adult associated with it, because you're only looking for adult studies, you can click adult, and it's going to bring up all of the articles that have adult associated with it, whether it's an automatic tag or one that you've added on. It also remembers all of the previous tags that you've got in your library. So if you're wanting to add a tag on that you have already created, if you type in S, it's going to bring up all of those previous tags you've got, but we only want SOCQ 121. Is it going to bring it up, or it's going to make me a liar? Maybe there's too many to list there. There we go. So the second letter has then filtered them down to the SO tags, where we can select that one. And once you click off and you click back on, it's saved in that panel. You can also add in little notes. So say this article here is, this article is fantastic, perfect for evidence of whatever you want to type. It doesn't have to be this, it can be anything. These notes are really good to just add your own opinions and whatever else you might need to add in to help you figure out if that article is going to fit what you need now, or maybe something in the future. Again, you click out, and then any notes attached to this are going to be viewable there. But also when you click down, you can see them really quickly. So if you're in your library and you want to figure out whether there's a note that is going to be, or an article that has a note on it that is going to be helpful to you, it's just viewable in this section as well. Easy for you to pick out from the rest. Another awesome feature that I personally really like is that if you have a PDF attached to your Zotero entry, you can double click on it, and instead of launching it in the browser, it actually launches it in the software. And this is really great if you're wanting to add any annotations or notes to this article and then have Zotero save them on the article for you. So if you're reading through this and you think, yes, I want to highlight this section here, Perfect. And you know what? I'm going to add a little comment here as well. This is great for my intro. And while I'm at it, I'm going to add that tag, SOC Q121, add. And this information now that's going to stay there, this little annotation. It'll be attached to this document when I come back. Other things that this little view can do is add in a little sticky note. So you can click on the note, click wherever you want to put it, and it's just going to save whether you've bookmarked this whole page is good for NMDS 111. And again, if you want to add that tag in and create it, that's fine. If you want to do a snapshot of a page, you can by just dragging. It's going to highlight a whole section for you. Again, click on. You can add comments and tags if you like. It's also going to save that there. And if you're using a piece of information or a resource that might be good across different subjects or for different things or for whatever reason, different sections, you can actually change this highlight note and screen capture to different colors as well. So you can filter down through here really specific and eye-catching annotations depending on the colors that you assign it, as well as the highlight, note, and screen capture that you do. Once you've got a lot of annotations here, they're going to start appearing as like a scrollable list, and you can just do a quick search here to see where was that note that I made about the intro. There it is. Click on it and it'll take you directly there. In this pane, you can also edit any of the information. So if you're looking here and you realize that for whatever reason, the information for maybe the publisher or the source or the authors is incorrect, you can just automatically edit that in here, along with any tags that are currently attached to the entire article, and any other related information that you want to add in. Now, if we close this and we reopen it, they're all still there in exactly the way that we've just done. It's going to remember that for you. And if we use this search function again, it also brings up that document where we've just been editing, and it's going to, because we've made that tag within the document so that you can see, oh, what was it again that I was using, whether it was this one or a different one, and all those annotations are there. You can, again, only wanting to look for the ones that actually use SOC Q121 as the tag, you can do a little search and it will bring them all up here for you. They've all been tagged though, so it's going to all come up. Okay, perfect. Now we're moving into the good part, which is what everyone has come for. And that's adding the citations into our documents. So when you have Zotero installed correctly, so you will need to do this once you download the software the first time. You can go to add-ons, make sure that these are enabled. At the moment they are, which is why it only gives me the option to disable. And you might also need to do a preferences check. And I'm just thinking, in the site option, if you click word processors, you can install the Microsoft Word add-in here or the LibreOffice add-in. It should happen automatically. So as long as you've got Word closed down, when you download Zotero, if you've got these little add-ons enabled that we were just looking at, should be automatic. But in the instance it's not, you can just reinstall or install it through this panel as well. There is information for this. Again, the installation process doesn't work perfectly all the time. It's usually pretty flawless with Zotero, which is why I really like it. Super easy to teach and to show and to get everyone started with. If you're having any issues, you can always kind of contact one of the library team members or just do a little Google, because Zotero has in their forums, like I mentioned at the beginning, heaps of information and how-tos from all different users using Zotero. And sometimes your question is just there and it's got the exact steps that you need to resolve that installation issue. In saying that, it's rarely an issue. As you can see here, I've got a Google Docs document. Zotero is already enabled in here, and it's going to work in exactly the same way as our Word document. I'm just showing you this now because Google Docs is a really great way if you've got a group project or if you're working with students to, on an assignment or for whatever reason, colleagues, you can actually share this document and work together with the Zotero citations that you add in. And that way, that collaborative project or group project that you're doing still has access to all those Zotero citations and references. In a Word document, it's the same. You get a little Zotero tab, and it gives you some options here as to what you want to do. Now, my assignment is ready to go. It does need to add in some citations, obviously. So what I'm going to do, this sentence clearly needs a citation. I'm going to prepare where I want the citation to be. And then you click Add Edit Citation. While Zotero is running, it syncs up and it's going to reach into your Zotero library, whether that's the software or the cloud. When you're using Word, it does need to go through the software. And you can type in either the title or the author name, and it's going to bring up a selection or the precise article that you want. So we want to add in maybe the Mayo Clinic one that we've just done. So we're going to go Mayo. There it is, cough by the Mayo Clinic. And we're going to add it in. Perfect. Ready to go. I can see here that the author has come up as the title of the web page, and we know the author is actually the Mayo Clinic. So I'm going to want to edit that one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Zotero and go cough. You're looking at the info tab, title of the web page. You can see here the author name has been left blank, and this was imported automatically as a web page entry into Zotero through the browser. And this is what I mean by just double checking. And if it doesn't always work, maybe be playful with the information that you've got. So if we want to put the Mayo Clinic in the author field, we're going to cut it out and chuck it in here instead. And now this should generate, we click out, there we go. If we sync this, which it's automatically syncing now, and then sync it into the Word document, watch here, it will actually update your reference automatically. And not only will it update that reference, but if you've used it a couple of times and you've only realized at maybe the 4th time you've cited Mayo Clinic and it's come up as cough, it's actually going to do all of the citations simultaneously when you update it through Zotero. So when you need to update a citation or a reference list that's available in Zotero, always do it through Zotero and sync it up because it will do it all automatically. If you were to do it here, so if we pretend that is actually supposed to be cough for whatever reason, the next time that you sync anything up, it's going to revert to the changes that you have in Zotero here. So if you're doing any edits manually, I would suggest to stop doing that and to just fix it once through Zotero so that it syncs up correctly every time. If we're also wanting to add in some other citations, which I'll do really quickly. Maybe it was KH. Here we go. Maybe this one here or this one here. Here we go. It's going to add it in, even if it's more than 2 authors. It does it out automatically for you. If you have to if you have to cite multiple authors in a brackets because maybe they're all kind of concurring on the idea that you're talking about, you just select the authors that you want to do. Whoops, maybe not JKE. Perfect. At the moment, I'm just selecting higgledy-piggledy, whatever I can for this example. it does import them all correctly, but it also automatically adds them in the correct order, which is in alphabetical order when you're citing this week. All right. If you have that software that you're wanting to put in, Food Zone, we're going to hit enter and it's going to come up correctly. And we'll put in Anatomy TV as well because we worked on that together. There it is. Perfect. And we've got some really nice citations here. And all we had to do was just figure out which ones we wanted to add in. When you get down to your reference list, if we're pretending that this is the majority of our citations and I want to see what my reference list is going to look like, all you do is pop your cursor in the area where you want your reference list to appear. Click Add Edit Bibliography, and it just automatically adds in the reference for any of the citations that you've added in. Unfortunately, it doesn't work in reverse. You do need to put your citations in first before it will generate any references. Then for whatever reason, if you're updating these citations or removing them, this list will just automatically update as well with all of those changes. Now, I want to show you what it looks like if you find a mistake in your reference list and how we can update that. So this one here has some capitalization. All right, so I'm just going to copy that author over, and instead of editing it here, which you absolutely can do, if we try here, we'll just edit the S and the R here for capitalization. Again, when you click refresh, it's just going to revert back to whatever Zotero has saved in there. So what we want to do is we actually want to make those edits in Zotero. You only have to do it one time, and then it's going to remember every instance after that. So here's that record, that citation that we need to be updated. I'm going to update some of the capitalization here just for the sake of an example. And if you click out of it to save the changes, click refresh here. And then on this side, keep your eye on this sentence here. It automatically changes that capitalization, but it also remembers it for any instance that you're using this again in the future. So we've only really had to edit it once this way. If you were to edit it in the document, you're going to have to edit it multiple times, not only for this document, but for any future users. So please, if you're doing any editing, do it through Zotero. It's just such a time saver. All right, there's another instance here in this reference list up here. You can see it's included the name of a database. We don't do that at Endeavour, and we don't do that usually for APA either. So this is an instance where it's taken too much information from that record that we've got saved in Zotero. So I'm just going to take that author name again, just so that I can do a really quick, easy, fast search. And do need to check which one it is. Impact on public health. Impact on public health. I'm going to scroll down to where it says Medline complete, and I'm just going to remove it. So that when we refresh, click out, refresh, and then once again, refresh here. If you keep an eye, it removes it. All that extra information is gone and it's ready to go. The capitalization also needs to be fixed here. I've already shown you how to do that, so I'm not going to show you how to do it again. In the Mayo Clinic one for cough, we've got some retrieve from information, and we don't use that information in an APA reference if it's not likely to be updated before we submit our assignment. The only instance of keeping this information is if it's something that will no doubt be updated by the time you submit your assignment. I don't think the cough page is going to be updated in the next 5 days before my assignment's due, so I want to get rid of that information. Same process again, we just take a portion of that reference that's going to be easy to search for. We want this one here, and we're going to remove the accessed date, time, delete, click out to save, refresh here, and refresh here. Perfect. That's a perfect Mayo Clinic reference. A nutrition experts one is perfect. We know that because we looked at it at the preview. We knew it was going to do perfect on this side, and the same with the anatomy TV one as well. So this is a really good example of why we just need to make sure that the information we're putting into Zotero is accurate and what we need to make accurate citations and references. It is important that you understand APA and where to look for this information as well to make these correct references. If you're ever unsure, you can just compare it to the examples that we have on the referencing guide. So maybe for this one here, you can see the Mayo Clinic example is here. And there is no site name, and we've used the site name as the author because APA rule says to use the organization as the author when there's no author available. So that's why we moved it from the organization site name field in Zotero into the author field. And we've now generated a correct reference as per our referencing guide. Other tips and tricks that I've found are really useful for using Zotero is if, for instance, you are doing a direct quotation or you need to include a page number in your citation, what you can do is you can click on the citation. If you click Add or Edit Citation, because you can also edit your citation through this button, not just add it in. It'll bring up the citation that you've highlighted. You can add in more and create a longer citation like this one here. Or if you're just wanting to edit this one and add in a page number, you can click on it and do it this way. Whether it's a volume, a paragraph, if it's on a web page, page number, whatever is most suitable. And then you can just add that information here. Alternatively, if you've got a page number, then you can just type in 55 and it's going to come up straight away, page 55. Hit enter and it generates that perfect citation with the page number attached to it. Now, if you have an instance where one of your citations maybe has an acronym or an abbreviation, so sometimes if you're using information from, say, World Health Organization, you would refer to them as World Health Organization once, and then every time after as WHO afterwards. You can actually get Zotero to do that for you in the citations. It's a little bit of a workaround because it doesn't have a feature that you can do that automatically, but I think that this is something that's really useful and it's a great tool that you can add into your tool belt with Zotero. In this example, I'll use Therapeutic Reference Center because that's one of our databases, and we refer to Therapeutic Reference Center as TRC. So we know when we're doing our abbreviations and our acronyms that you do need to refer first to your your resource. You need to first cite the full name before you can start talking about its abbreviation. And if we go in, just trying to think, it might be in citations. Go here. Go to organizations with an abbreviation. So this is a really complex abbreviation we can see here, but there's two ways you can do it. You should know this because you already know your APA citations really well. So in a narrative citation, you use the full name as part of the sentence. And then for subsequent citations, you can then use the abbreviation because you've mentioned from there on out, I will be referring this as this abbreviation, and then the subsequent citations are this. Saves your word count, and it's a really nice way to just keep everything running nicely. You can also do it as a parenthetical citation, and that's when everything is in the brackets. So in this instance, you do the full name again at the first citation, and then you tell everybody what you're going to refer to it from here on out by using square brackets because we've already used those curved brackets here. And then that's your subsequent citations. So this is just two ways you can do it. The reason I'm pointing this out is because I'll show you both ways to do it. Most people tend to beeline towards this one, which is totally fine, but sometimes it's more appropriate in your sentence to refer to the organization as part of your sentence rather than just dumping it at the end. So if we're doing therapeutic reference center, I'm going to do, I wonder if if I've saved it in. Here we go. I've got a little resource that I've already imported in or added in manually into Zotero. And you can see here, it's got that information required to build a therapeutic reference citation here. Natural medicines. We can see that we've got a citation, we've got the author, date, we've got the title and the database name. All right. So this information needs to be in Zotero, which you can see here it is. I've used the information directly off this page. The only difference is that our page is called folate, not red clover. So that's why we've got folate here. Now, if we generate this in our Word document, stick with me because it is worth knowing. We can add in here folate. The title of the resource. And you can see here what I've done is I've actually pre-added in square brackets TRC. And the reason I've done this is because Zotero is not going to add in. Why is it not coming up? There we go. Zotero is not going to do that automatically. So I've added it into the title here. But what we can do in our citation when we're editing the citation is we can actually remove this component after we've done that first citation of the full organization name. So again, I'm going to add in folate. It's going to come up a bit weird. So if we were to hit enter, it's going to come up with that information here. But this is also telling us that from here on out, we're going to be referring to Therapeutic Reference Center as TRC. Now, if I want to use a subsequent citation, just TRC 2022, you can add it in. You can type in folate again. It's going to add in exactly the same thing, but if we click on this as we did when we're doing the page number, what you can do in the prefix is add in that abbreviation, and we're going to omit the author. So that's this part, and it's going to make that disappear, and it's just going to shove the prefix and the year together. So we hit enter, and that's your subsequent citation now that we've done a parenthetical citation for it. If you're wanting to do instead of a parenthetical, that narrative citation where it's part of the sentence, not just shoved in brackets, you would just type I'm not even spelling it correctly, Therapeutic Reference Center. You are our authors. And then we're going to do the same thing we did here. So we highlight the reference. We're going to edit the reference, click into this. We're going to omit the author, get rid of that altogether, and we're going to put something in instead. Perfect. So there we've got our first citation with the full name. Here on out, we're using TRC. And there we go. TRC is there in the subsequent citations as well. All right. Typically, if you're doing this, I'm going to cut that and I'm going to pop it here. It would probably be further at the beginning of the sentence. So it would look more like this, and then your subsequent citations would look like this. This is also really nifty if you're wanting to edit anything here just for this document, but keep the record as it is. You can do that by adding edit here. So whether it's a citation or whether it's the bibliography. So if you go add edit bibliography, you can just select the ones that you want. So we're going to have to edit that Therapeutic Reference Center because we know that TRC is not included. We don't include that acronym or abbreviation in our end reference. So if we update that and click OK, it's automatically been added in. And it's now a correct reference without that TRC in brackets, which we had to include on the record. And when you do this, you're going to get a little pop-up window, which will ask if you want to keep the changes that you've made for this document permanent for this document. And you can click yes. And that means whenever you do a refresh, it's not going to do that revert back. I would suggest that you only do those push changes if you intend to make changes just for the one document. If you're wanting to continue moving forward using these references, edit them instead in Zotero versus editing them in the document. But for this instance where we've had to use the full name and then the abbreviation, you do need to kind of keep that change there. Okay. That is pretty much my knowledge of Zotero. You can replicate any of these steps into that Google Doc as well in exactly the same way. It's super easy. Just add in your citation. To edit the citation, you highlight it, click edit. Same for the reference list. As you add stuff in, it's going to keep your reference list and probably continue adding stuff in the correct order. It's automatically hanging indent 2.0 line spacing, and it's also all in alphabetical order already, so it just continues adding everything in correctly. If you're wanting to edit any of these, again, try to do it through the Zotero software versus forcing edits this way. If you're wanting to make a change that would impact your record, but you need to keep your record the way it is, like with the square brackets here, so that we get correct citations, then you can force them through the opposite way by just changing them for this document, and then any future documents, it would revert back to how it is in the Zotero record. Zotero does require a little bit of patience and a bit of playing around. This webinar, hopefully you'll be able to refer back to it a couple of times. If you're having trouble with APA referencing, in general, I really suggest getting strong with APA referencing before using Zotero, just so that you're able to pick up those quick edits that need to be made. And if you have any issues or any troubleshooting issues, then you can absolutely come to a librarian and we'll hopefully be able to figure those out with you. Zotero does have, once again, really good resources through its website for troubleshooting. You can use any of the information in our referencing guide to help build those references in your Zotero library. But if you're importing anything in through the browser extension, it's going to be mostly accurate. You only need to make sure that the capitalization is correct, the authors are in the correct order, and if it's bringing through extra information, just get rid of that so that you get that nice reference at the end. I hope that you found this webinar useful. You can refer back to it again after you've watched it the first time. I've got timestamps below this where you can just go to the area of the webinar that you're interested in. If you're interested in installing Zotero or looking at any other Zotero resources, we have a full Zotero guide available on the library website where you can download Zotero for free, and a couple of tips and tricks and any troubleshooting that has kind of come up in the past. There's also a basic Zotero window, so it's a really short form of this webinar, and it's just a good introduction as to whether you're interested in using it, or maybe a quick refresher on just importing and generating citations. Thank you very much for joining this webinar today. If you have any questions, you can find information for librarians here on the Contact Us page with our email addresses. You can also book in a consultation where we can discuss and troubleshoot your Zotero issues, or you can talk with the virtual librarian who will be able to help you in the moment.